When a fighter becomes a UFC champion, their main priority is to defend their title against the #1 contender of their division. But there have been some champions who have avoided the #1 contenders to pursue other fights. So here is 4 times UFC champions avoided a top contender. Number 4. Eddie Alvarez finished Rafael dos Anjos by TKO in the first round at UFC Fight Night 90 to become the new UFC lightweight champion of the world. The clear #1 contender of the division at that time was Khabib Nurmagomedov. The UFC had sent him 2 contracts for the title fight at UFC 205 and UFC 206. Rumors started surfacing that then UFC featherweight champion Conor McGregor would jump in front of all of the lightweight contenders to fight Eddie Alvarez. Eddie Alvarez preferred to fight Conor McGregor as he thought it would be the best suited matchup for his skills. Just a couple of weeks later, the UFC announced that Eddie Alvarez would be defending his UFC lightweight title against then UFC featherweight champion Conor McGregor in the main event at UFC 205. It turned out that the UFC wanted to book the fight between Conor McGregor and Eddie Alvarez and had used Khabib Nurmagomedov to get the deal done. At UFC 205, Conor McGregor finished Eddie Alvarez by TKO in the second round to become the first fighter ever to hold 2 belts simultaneously. Number 3. Conor McGregor knocked out Jose Aldo in just 13 seconds of the first round at UFC 194 to become the new UFC featherweight champion of the world. The clear #1 contender at that time was Frankie Edgar, who had put together a 5-fight winning streak and had just defeated top-ranked featherweight Chad Mendes by knockout in the first round at the Ultimate Fighter 22 finale. But Conor McGregor had other plans, where he wanted to go after the UFC lightweight title. Conor McGregor's first title defense should have been against Frankie Edgar, where it would have been interesting to see how Conor McGregor would deal with Frankie Edgar's relentless fighting style. The former champion Jose Aldo and Frankie Edgar were matched up at UFC 200 for the interim UFC featherweight title, and the winner of the fight would have faced Conor McGregor in a title unification bout at a later date. In the fight, Jose Aldo completely outclassed Frankie Edgar to win the fight by a unanimous decision. Number 2. Michael Bisping knocked out Luke Rockhold in the first round at UFC 199 to become the new UFC middleweight champion of the world. The next clear #1 contender at that time was Jacare Souza, who had just defeated Vitor Belfort by TKO in the first round at UFC 198. Instead of fighting Jacare Souza, the UFC decided to book a rematch with Dan Henderson at UFC 204, where Michael Bisping won the fight by a unanimous decision. The next clear #1 contender was Yoel Romero, who had just brutally knocked out former champion Chris Weidman at UFC 205. But Michael Bisping had other plans. He was more interested in fighting George St. Pierre, who had been out of action for 3 years. Just a couple of weeks later, the UFC had announced that they had come to terms with GSP and he would get the next shot at Michael Bisping's middleweight title in the summer. Just recently, the fight was cancelled due to GSP needing more time to prepare for the fight. With Michael Bisping currently recovering from a knee injury, the UFC has booked an interim title fight between Yoel Romero and Robert Whittaker for UFC 213. Number 1. Jermaine Durandamy defeated Holly Holm by a unanimous decision at UFC 208 to become the first ever UFC Women's Featherweight Champion of the world. The next clear #1 contender was the Invicta FC Featherweight Champion Chris Cyborg, who was ready to face the champion. Chris Cyborg had mauled both Leslie Smith and Lena Landsberg at a catchweight of 140 pounds. In Jermaine Durandamy's post-fight interview at UFC 208, Joe Rogan told her that she would be facing Chris Cyborg at a later date. Immediately, Jermaine Durandamy said that she needed surgery on her hands, which many had thought that she was making excuses. Just recently, Jermaine Durandamy refused to fight Chris Cyborg as she said that Chris Cyborg was a proven cheater. She said she is even willing to have her belt stripped by the UFC and wants to return to the bantamweight division. So guys, do you think that the UFC should punish her for not taking the Chris Cyborg fight? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you.